Welcome to Ask an MS Expert. I'm John Strum, and I'm your moderator, also the host of the Real Talk MS podcast. Each week, Real Talk MS reaches thousands of people in more than 100 countries around the world with the news that people affected by MS need to know. My wife, Jean, lived with progressive MS for 23 years, so I've had a front row seat experiencing all the ways that MS can impact a family. Today, I'll be asking our expert the questions you want answered. Please feel free to post your comments and questions on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. MS Navigators will be online throughout today's live program, answering your questions, connecting you to resources. The role of a health coach in a multidisciplinary approach to managing MS is to help you to feel and function better. This can include creating sustainable, healthy habits while breaking barriers in a way that feels good. Amy Behimer is a doctor of pharmacy and a nationally board-certified health and wellness coach who helps people feel and function at their very best, even while living with an autoimmune diagnosis. Amy lives with MS and demonstrates firsthand how the power of coaching can help you feel better today and prepare you to thrive while facing the uncertainty of tomorrow. Welcome, Amy. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I like to start these conversations by clarifying our definitions. So, can you tell us what a health coach is and how a coach can help someone who's living with MS?
Absolutely. As an expert being invited here, I love to say that when we are working with a health coach, there really are two experts at the table. So as a patient, we are showing up as the experts in ourselves. And so on the flip side, a coach can really bring the expertise in behavior change, can bring the expertise in healthy habits that can help our brains and bodies thrive with a diagnosis. And I like to say an expertise in how to actually make changes in a way that feels good so that it's for good. I think coaching also, how a coach can help is to really get people to embrace goals and how to set them and how to go after them. Likely people have a history with goals. Maybe they've tried to set them before, and if they didn't quite reach it, they may have used it to beat themselves up. But I really love to teach people how goals can be used as a fuel to learn from, to continue to grow, and to become a person that you really want to be with your diagnosis.
I've also heard the term wellness coach. Is there a difference between a health coach and a wellness coach?
Good question. You've likely, if you're listening and been in the online space, you maybe have heard of a health coach, like you mentioned, a wellness coach, maybe an autoimmune coach or an MS coach or a life coach. There's a lot of terminology out there. And it's because it's not currently regulated, but that is changing. So if you have seen or heard the term health and wellness coach, it is actually a certification through the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching. And there are currently 11,000 nationally board certified health and wellness coaches. And their mission is really to put more coaches out into the healthcare industry and to have these coaches that hold this certification really be trained to the highest standard of the profession. So you may hear a lot of different terms, and just know that there is a more regulation coming with this nationally board certified health and wellness coach availability.
So I think you've already started to answer my next question, but I'm curious, why might someone seek out a health coach?
One of the best reasons to consider working with a coach is because there's something that you want. So whether that's a goal, maybe a dream you've had, maybe an aim for your life, and that could be as simple as feeling better, or you want to be sure you're doing what you can to function at your best, or you want to know that you're doing your part for your health when it comes to your lifestyle. And maybe you've struggled to get there on your own. Maybe you want to try something different and get a little extra dose of accountability, or try to do it in a way that maybe is less frustrating. Maybe you can embrace learning a process from somebody, and want help developing some of that motivation to keep making changes, again, in a way that feels good so that we get to keep doing it for a long time.
Amy, from your perspective, what makes a good health coach?
So, as I mentioned before, there is not a ton of structure related to coaches at this time. That is changing. So, every coach you meet will be a little bit different. And that can be a good thing. And the way I would love to share the answer to this question is, through my journey living with primary progressive MS for over 12 years, I would often get the question, even before I was coaching, of how do you seem to be thriving, whether that's physically, mentally, emotionally, all these different parts of our health. And it really came down to what I call a special sauce. I used to call it a secret sauce, but then I realized I don't want it to be a secret anymore. The more people who know about this, the better. And so that is now also how I love to describe what someone can expect when working with a health coach. And the five ingredients of that sauce, they all start with an S because I love alliteration. But the first one is you can expect to have your coach leaning on good quality science. So whether that's the science of habits, the science of, again, behavior change, the science of how to set and reach goals. The science is useful, but only, of course, if we bring ourselves to it. Back to how we talked about you being the expert in you. We also look at self-understanding, self-awareness, self-confidence, and building up your self-trust that you can reach your goals. So that's two of the five ingredients. The third one is strategies. So a coach that is effective can also help you learn strategies that you get to take out into your life with you. Because anything that we learn together is only as useful as it is to be able to apply it to your own life. The fourth one is a coach that just helps you feel supported through the ups and downs, because there will be ups and downs with MS and with all of life. And so really ensuring that you are feeling supported. And the last thing that a coach can bring, a good coach that can bring, is simplicity. So things can get very complicated very fast, but really always being able to boil it down to what is your next step? What is the next thing that's going to keep you moving forward?
While we're discussing what someone can expect from working with a health coach, maybe we should talk about some unrealistic expectations that someone might have about working with a health coach.
I think the primary unrealistic expectation is that you will meet somebody who's going to tell you what you should do, because that just doesn't work. We know from the science, again, the top reasons that goals fail. And one of the top reasons goals fail is that somebody else sets the goal, not ourselves. And so if you're looking for a coach to tell you what to do, then you may feel like your expectations are not being met.
We heard from Hollis. He says he'd like to work with a health coach, but he's overwhelmed because the process itself feels different than finding his other MS healthcare providers, and he's concerned about getting the right fit. So, what is the process of finding a reputable health coach?
That's a great question. We mentioned the credential of National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach before, so they actually do have a directory. There's a couple other directories for partners throughout the National MS Society. Some people are familiar with the work of Dr. Terry Walls, and she has a directory of people that are trained in this lifestyle approach to add to our healthcare plan. And another directory that is available is through the Institute for Functional Medicine, which does have some credibility, and there are health coaches that are certified through their programs as well. Another important thing when you're looking for a health coach is to be able to have the chance to speak with them, ask about their process, ask about results that they've seen, and really pay attention to how you feel when you're interacting with them, when you're learning from them. If there's a way to get your questions answered or spend time with them, whether it's on listening to them on a podcast or teach during free classes that they offer, or having a call to see if you guys are a good fit before signing up. I like to call it a coach check. And really it's to check for two things. Is coaching something that can help you get what you're looking for? Back to that expectation question that we talked about before. And then also, am I the coach for you? So think about those things when you're looking for a coach to work with.
And when you are looking for a health coach, is a referral from a neurologist or your primary care physician needed or not?
It is not needed. It's definitely a plus. I'm starting to see a shift, and I've been fortunate to partner with a large center here in Atlanta where I live, and other practices across the country where physicians and physician extenders, like your nurse practitioners and your PAs, I've created prescription pads where they can say, this is a prescription to talk to a health coach and consider how a health coach can help you reach your goals. And the more of that we see, I think the better, because there's that transfer of trust. Our patients trust our neurologist. And when the neurologist can find a health coach that they truly feel confident can help their patients carry out their healthcare plan and all the lifestyle pieces that go into it, then I think that's just going to be such a huge advancement for coaching and holistic care.
Since you've mentioned that the process of certification is really an evolving process right now, are there any red flags to be aware of that would indicate someone is not as qualified as they may claim to be?
I think one red flag, back to what we talked about with expectations, is if someone's telling you what you should do, what you should eat, the way you should move, or that they have found the way to do things. And again, a red flag would be if you don't have a chance to ask a question or get a sense of what it's like to learn from them, work with them, and spend time in their communities and in their world.
We heard from Armando, who wants to know if working with a health coach replaces the need to work with a neurologist, a counselor, or another member of the MS care team to help manage his MS.
I'm going to give a loud, absolutely not a replacement. A health coach is one member of your support squad. I like to call it your support squad because we all lift each other up. And we all know about DMTs and likely have worked with our neurologist on these disease-modifying therapies that can be a part of our plan. I like to call habits our disease-modifying habits, our DMHs, because they really can work in concert with every other part of our plan from our neurologist. It's like peanut butter and jelly. They work together, they do well together. And so definitely not a replacement, and it's more of an enhancement.
Gina tells us that she's made an appointment with a health coach. She has MS-related cognitive issues, and she wants to prepare for the visit ahead of time. So what can Gina do to get ready for that first appointment?
That's a good question, Gina. And one of the best things you can do ahead of an appointment with a health coach is to start thinking about what you want to see change. So is it something related to your habits? Is it a dream or an outcome you're looking for in the future? Because the odds of hitting our target are going to go up if we know what we're aiming for. And so I always like to remind people that we have to know what we want, or at least be willing to find out. Because again, back to those reasons why goals fail, if we're not the ones setting the goal, then it can make it feel harder to actually get to the goal. One more thing I'd mention for Gina is that simplicity is is key when working with a coach. And hopefully you are meeting with a coach who is going to meet you exactly where you're at. So if you feel like you do have some cognitive issues going on, you're not alone. And really finding a coach that can meet you where you're at and just help you discover your next step. So start thinking about what you'd like and come to the call ready to share that.
Howard shares that he struggles to set goals because he feels he lacks the motivation to see them through. Why can it feel so challenging for Howard and lots of other people to make lasting changes to their lifestyle and their habits?
Motivation is one of my favorite things to talk about because often we think we either have it or we don't, or that it's outside of our control and we just have to wait for it to grace us with its presence. But instead, motivation really, if we break it down, is there's three parts to motivation. And I like to say it uses our head, our heart, and our hands. And so when we have our head on board with our heart and our hands, we start to feel aligned. And what those three parts are is one, a belief that what we want is actually possible. Two, a desire for it. So that you likely have heard of what's your why? Why do we want that thing? And also the third part is using our hands. What's our commitment to make it happen? So, if you, Howard, feel like you're struggling with motivation, really looking at those three parts, getting specific and seeing which part may be lacking. Your belief that what you want is actually possible, really tapping into why you want it, or maybe making a commitment, unlike you have before, to help you reach your goal. And a coach can absolutely help with all three of those parts. There's an old Latin proverb, and it says, if there is no wind, row. And I love this because motivation, sometimes when we have it, it feels like wind. It feels like, oh, this is kind of easy. Our boat is moving pretty smooth and pretty fast. But if there's not motivation, then we may need to do a little bit of work. We may need to row. And so as a coach, I like to teach you how to row. I like to row with you. I like to show you that the steps behind something that feels so elusive.
How can following a framework help make changes in a way that feels good and doesn't feel overwhelming?
Good question. Back to bringing in some of what the science about behavior change uh, shows us. There are three research-backed reasons why change is usually not sustainable for people in the long run. And so one of those reasons is that we lack a common operating system, or what I call a framework, to help us in a holistic way see how everything that we're doing for our health can all fit together. So frameworks help to clarify, they help to simplify all the various things we can be doing. They help to keep us on track and combat what is being called infobesity in the health world. So if you are on social media, if you listen to podcasts, there is so much information about what you can do to feel better and be healthy. And there's so much so that sometimes we actually get lost in it and we get frozen because there's almost too much information. So a simple framework can help us sort through that information and follow along in a way that is not overwhelming. And frameworks also tend to be kind of sticky. So similar to the secret sauce, it's 5 S's. And I also have a framework, as you mentioned during the introduction, of the Habit Hub for Autoimmune Health, which is also the name of my podcast. And that framework is designed to help with that, to simplify, it's holistic, and helps us focus in on really what matters.
As we've been discussing setting goals, achieving goals, what are some of the key things that you see people doing to be successful in achieving their goals?
So we talked about following a framework. That's one. The two other research-backed reasons to round out the three that I mentioned, one is taking action. People who are reaching their goals, they aren't just learning more and more information. They're taking it and they're applying it to their real life. They are taking it to the streets, as I like to say. So, and then the third research-backed reason that change can feel hard is that we don't go to the root of the problem. So what going to the root actually looks like is sometimes it's looking at the thoughts and the feelings, the habits in our thoughts and our feelings that precede the habit that we are trying to reach on the outside. So it helps if we are actually willing to look at all those different layers of our habits. Another thing that I really do see helping people reach their goals is being willing to embrace support, being willing to ask for support and try something different.
Let's talk about the flip side of that question. What are some of the barriers that people have to overcome in order to see success?
I think the biggest barrier for all of us is overcoming our human brain. There is this thing called the motivational triad, and we have survived this long and we continue to survive because our brain likes to do one of three things. It likes to seek pleasure, it likes to avoid discomfort, and it likes to save energy. So it doesn't love to change. And so with all of these things we're talking about, it's a change. So it can be scary for our brains. And so we need to find a way to overcome what it means to be human. And again, another way to think about what we need to overcome is by looking at what are the reasons that goals fail and being able to solve for each of those reasons. It's kind of like I describe it as, when we're back in school and we have the questions to the test ahead of time, so we know what to study for. And so when working with a coach, it's super helpful because as a coach, I know the top 5 or 6 reasons that goals fail. And so when we work together, we know the questions that we're going to be asked. And so we know the challenges that are going to come up. And so we just solve for each one as we go.
Logan says he's interested in health coaching, but he needs to stay on a tight budget so he can afford his very expensive MS medications. How much can Logan expect health coaching to cost? And is health coaching something that's covered by insurance?
It's a great question. It's not covered by insurance at this point, but it's heading there thanks to the work of the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching. They are taking steps to get codes to be able to start to track the work of coaches. A promising thing that happened this year is that if your coach is certified by the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching, you can try to use your HSA or your FSA dollars, which are those pre-tax dollars. I have clients who are able to use that, and that is because of the great work we're seeing in the research of outcomes that are happening when people are working with coaches. So it's very promising. I also think that it would be good for Logan to know that other ways, free ways to work with a coach could be finding one that speaks to you on podcasts, which are free, finding coaches who offer potentially group programs, which is a more accessible way to still get the benefits of coaching, but at a more affordable level.
Jenna has relapsing remitting MS, and she's a mom of 2, so her days are already very full. She worries about the time commitment that might be involved in working with a health coach. So, how long is a typical coaching session, and how many sessions might someone need?
So I will get to the length of a typical session and how many, but first I want to share that we don't necessarily need a ton of extra time to be able to work with a coach and start to implement some of these things and see lifestyle changes start to make a difference. I really think that a part of the work that you can do with a coach is to help turn that thought, that belief that I don't have time for this, help turn that on its head and ask a better question, like, how can I make time for this? And how can I work this into my life? Because back to the successes that I see people have, sometimes starting to work with a health coach when life is really busy and when life seems to be throwing a lot at you, sometimes that can lead to the most success because you learn how to make changes amongst life's happenings and So when life keeps happening, because it's going to keep happening, you learn how to stay healthy in that same environment. And so I guess I would like to have everyone leave here with the idea that maybe we don't need a ton of extra time, but instead we can incorporate it into our life and into our busy days. With that said, a typical session can range from 30 minutes to 60 minutes. And the amount of time that we work together really can vary based on what you're looking for. I like to share that having a coach can be such a value add for all the things that you're going through that I don't think it's unrealistic or unreasonable to always have exposure to some coaching moving forward. But there absolutely are programs where you can learn some skills and apply them in shorter bursts as well.
Ricardo lives in a rural community, uses a mobility device, so he doesn't have access to health coaches in his area. What options are available for Ricardo?
Mobility is absolutely a barrier for some of us with MS, as is being in areas that don't have a lot of health coaching. And so my programs and many other programs, they're virtual. It also helps us overcome what I sometimes call appointment fatigue. So having to go here, having to go there, another appointment, but getting to do it from the comfort of your own home is such a perk. And also podcasts are another way that is virtual as well, and you can listen anywhere.
You've shared some great insights and information about health coaching and how it could benefit someone who's living with MS. What would you say is the top takeaway that you'd like our viewers to remember and to use?
I would love people to leave here with a belief that they can do this, they can make changes, they can feel better even with this diagnosis. They can do things that can help their bodies function better, even with MS, and that it's possible to start today. So, again, belief is such a powerful part of change. It has actually proven that when we believe that we have an impact on our future health, we see an improvement to our immune cells and we see lower inflammation, and belief, like we talked about, is part one of motivation. So if nothing else, I would love people to leave here with a belief that it is possible, whatever that thing that they're wanting, it is possible, and that they can trust in tiny steps to get there.
Good advice, and thanks so much for being with us today, Amy.
Thank you for having me.
Today's program survey has now been posted in the chat for your feedback. Please take a minute and complete it to help us create programs, topics with you in mind. Please be sure to visit the Society's website for information and resources on MS, connection opportunities, and ways for you to get involved. You can also connect with an MS navigator to receive personalized support by phone, email, or through the Society's website by chat. A recording of today's program will be posted on the MS Society's website at nationalmssociety.org/MSexpert, as well as on Facebook and YouTube. Finally, I'll invite you to join me each week on the Real Talk MS podcast, where we continue the conversation that we start here. You can find Real Talk MS on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Thanks for joining us for Ask an MS Expert. See you next week.